Inside, the smell of fresh coffee danced in the air. On a chilly Monday morning, a young man named Ethan settled into the corner with his laptop, completely absorbed in his work. Dressed in a faded hoodie, frayed jeans, and worn sneakers, he was just another face in the crowd, lost in his ambitions. But the cafe was not just a place for him to work. It held memories for Ethan. He often stayed here late into the night, drawing inspiration from the clinking of cups and the chatter of people. He loved the energy it brought, even if he sometimes felt invisible in his unassuming attire. As Ethan focused on his laptop screen, he noticed a group of students seated nearby. They laughed and shared inside jokes, their voices ringing through the cafe. One girl in particular caught his attention. Her name was Tara. With perfectly styled hair and a designer coat that looked like it could cost a small fortune, she was the kind of girl everyone noticed. Suddenly, she turned her head and her eyes landed on Ethan. A smirk appeared on her face as she turned to her friends, pointing right at him. "Look at that guy," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. Her friends erupted into laughter, their eyes darting back to Ethan, scrutinizing him. Ethan felt his cheeks flush. He tried to ignore them, burying himself deeper into his work, but the laughter pierced through his concentration. It made his heart race and his stomach twist. It wasn't the first time someone had mocked him for his clothes, but in this moment it felt especially cruel. It felt personal. He remembered the countless nights he spent designing his own clothing line, dreaming of the day it would be successful. He had poured countless hours into his sketches, using every spare penny to invest in materials. But today he felt small and unimportant, and the mockery of strangers only magnified those feelings. While the laughter continued, Ethan resolved to keep his head down. After all, he knew who he was, right? He had a vision, a purpose. But as the minutes passed, he found it harder to focus. The words and snickers lingered in his thoughts like a dark cloud. As the day wore on, the cafe began to fill with more customers. The chatter grew louder. But amidst the noise, a distinct sound caught Ethan's attention, the soft jingle of bells. It was the door opening, allowing a rush of cold air to sweep in. Ethan glanced up and his heart nearly stopped. There, framed against the light, stood a man in a sleek suit. He radiated confidence. His presence was commanding, almost magnetic. It was Oliver Finn, the founder of a wildly successful fashion brand, the very brand Ethan admired. He had seen this man's face everywhere. Ethan felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What was he doing here? Then he noticed Tara and her friends. Their laughter faded, replaced with awe. They had turned their full attention to Oliver, whispering to each other, eyes wide with surprise. Without skipping a beat, Oliver walked over to the group. Tara's eyes glittered with a chance to charm. "Mr. Finn," she exclaimed, her previous mockery forgot. As Ethan sat back in his seat, his hands trembled slightly. What would it be like to have someone like Oliver Finn notice him? When he had dreamed about his own clothing line, he had always wanted to share it with people who understood its importance. But here he was, watching someone he admired being fawned over by the very person who had laughed at him moments ago. Oliver smiled broadly, soaking in the attention. He engaged with the group, shaking hands and taking selfies. But as he spoke, his gaze shifted momentarily towards Ethan's corner table. For a brief second, their eyes met. Ethan's heart raced. Did he see him? The thought sent a spark of hope through him. Could he leave the shadows of mockery and step into the light? But just as quickly as the connection formed, Oliver's attention moved back to Tara. Disheartened, Ethan looked down at his laptop, feeling that familiar sting of insignificance creeping in again. Suddenly, Tara, never one to shy away from the spotlight, nudged her friends. She pointed directly at Ethan, and he felt the heat rise in his face again. The laughter bubbled up again, but this time it wasn't just Ethan who felt the weight of her words. Oliver seemed to catch onto the vibe in the room. His friendly smile faltered, and he turned to look at Ethan more closely. Ethan's heart thudded against his chest. He noticed Oliver's expression shifting, confusion settling into the deep lines of his face. "Wait a minute," Oliver said, stepping forward. Tara shrugged, a haughty grin still plastered on her face. "Just some friendly teasing," she replied, waving a hand dismissively. Oliver shook his head slightly, his expression serious. "That's not how we build each other up." His words hung in the air, powerful and firm. It wasn't just a response, it was a challenge. Ethan watched, stunned. Could this be happening? He felt a sense of belonging behind the embarrassment. He had come to love fashion because it told stories, and this moment was no different. Oliver continued, "Real style is about confidence, creativity, and courage." For a moment, silence enveloped the cafe. Tara's face fell as the other students exchanged confused glances. They weren't used to being called out, and that discomfort was palpable. Ethan's heart surged. He had listened to every word, and it resonated deeply. It became clear that the mockery directed at him wasn't a reflection of his worth, but rather an inability to see beyond outward appearances. Oliver turned to Ethan then, his gaze warm and inviting. Feeling emboldened, Ethan took a deep breath. "Thank you, Mr. Finn," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been working on my own clothing line. It's not much yet, but..." There was a pause, and then Oliver stepped forward, extending his hand. "I'd love to see it." Ethan couldn't believe what was happening. It was as if the world had transformed around him. He rose to meet Oliver, shaking his hand firmly. In that brief moment, he felt a surge of confidence, as if the mocking laughter had dissolved into nothingness. Tara and her friends looked on, their expressions shifting from amusement to astonishment. The room was charged with a newfound energy as Ethel connected with Oliver, who was now leaning in, genuinely engaged. As they spoke, Ethan shared his ideas, his dreams, the designs he'd sketched late into the night. He poured out his heart, inspired not just by Oliver's status, but by the kindness he had shown. Oliver listened intently, nodding along, encouraging him with every word. Moments later, Tara couldn't take it anymore, but he looked so basic, she blurted out, her voice weak against the current of the conversation. Oliver shot her a pointed look. What defines basic? Is it the clothing or the courage to be oneself? Ethan may not fit into your narrow box, but he's creating something that reflects his soul. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. It was a gift to truly be seen, not for the clothes he wore, but for the person he was inside. The whole cafe seemed to come alive with possibility, shedding the shadows of mockery and ignorance. As Oliver and Ethan continued to talk, Tara and her friends gradually got up. One by one, they began to leave. A silence followed as their laughter faded. The tension that had filled the cafe transformed into something bright and hopeful. When Ethan finally sat down again with his laptop, disbelief washed over him. Just moments ago, he was the subject of ridicule, and now he was sharing the same space with someone who turned his pain into motivation. There was power in understanding, and kindness could shift everything. Later, Ethan would reflect on that day. He'd remember how one moment of laughter turned into a moment of connection, built around respect for passion and creativity. Oliver's words resonated long after they parted ways. He realized that the clothes he wore didn't define him. They were just one part of his story. And sometimes it takes a little moment like that to realize your worth is carved not by others' opinions, but by your own vision and the strength to pursue it relentlessly. In the heart of that busy cafe, where once he felt small, Ethan uncovered the courage within him. He discovered that even in the face of mockery, the spark of creativity could rise above, unyielding and bold. And just like that, the day turned into something more than a simple Monday. It became a reminder that we all have the power to stand up, to embrace who we are, and let our dreams shine through, no matter what anyone else thinks. The bell on the cafe door jingled, and the moment came to a standstill. Ethan sat in the corner, fingers poised over his laptop keys, heart pounding like a wild drum. Outside, the sun shone brightly, but inside, a storm of emotions swirled. He had been lost in his own world, crafting sketches and plans for a clothing line that could one day be his escape, his dream. But everything shifted when he heard the laughter. Tara's voice sliced through the cafe, sharp and cutting. He knew she was talking about him, pointing, laughing with her friends. They all turned, their eyes lingering on his frayed jeans and an old hoodie that had seen better days. Each chuckle echoed like a slap, striking at the fragile confidence he had carefully built. Ethan sunk deeper into his seat, trying to blend into the fabric of the cafe. He had come here to create, to feel inspired among the hustle and bustle. But now he felt as if he were on a stage, exposed and vulnerable. It wasn't the first time someone had mocked him. It wouldn't be the last, but they felt different. Today felt monumental. Across the room, Tara tossed her hair back, a queen surveying her kingdom. With each mocking comment, she further tightened a noose of self-doubt around him. She declared, and her friends erupted in laughter, while Ethan felt something inside him crack. Yet what Tara didn't know was that Ethan was on the cusp of something big, an opportunity that could transform everything. He spent nights sketching patterns and cutting fabric, dreaming about the day his designs would grace runways. Every stitch held a piece of his soul. But how could he share that with the world when people like Tara thrived on tearing others down? Then with a gust of cold air, with a jingle of bells, everything changed. The door swung open again, ushering in a charismatic figure that commanded attention. It was Oliver Finn, the founder of a fashion empire that had taken the industry by storm. As he strode in, he seemed almost larger than life, his tailored suit clinging to him like a second skin, his aura exuding confidence. Ethan's heart raced again, but not from mockery this time. Oliver drew closer to the counter, completely unaware of the small turmoil brewing in Ethan's corner. "Coffee to go, please," he said, his voice rich, carrying a warmth that filled the room. The barista nodded, awestruck, as the atmosphere shifted, a magnetic force pulling everyone's focus toward him. Tara's laughter faltered, and she straightened up, her tone shifting as she approached him. "Mr. Finn," she exclaimed, her earlier bravado melting away. Ethan watched as she flipped her hair back, returning to the version of herself that sought attention. For a moment, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Could he channel the same confidence that Oliver emitted? But the laughter from Tara's table cut through it again. She gestured toward him, and the laughter roared back to life. Look at him. Fear gripped Ethan's heart, but with it came determination. He pushed back against the weight of their laughter, summoning courage from deep within. This was not just a boy who wore old clothes. This was an artist in the making. He had a vision, a bravery that came from creating something with his own hands. Oliver turned to Ethan, brow furrowed, eyes locking onto his. Felt electric, as if time stopped. Did he see the shame written across Ethan's face? Did he feel the weight of Tara's mockery? Ethan's heart raced even faster as the room fell silent. The ever-confident Oliver stepped toward him, curiosity alight in his eyes. The air tensed, all eyes shifted, including Tara's, who stood fumbling for the right words. "Hey man," Oliver said, an easy smile breaking through. The question hung in the air like an open door. Ethan felt as if everyone was holding their breath, mirroring his own anticipation. I work on a clothing line," he muttered, each word escaping his lips as if it were a fragile secret. Oliver exclaimed, leaning in closer, genuinely interested, as if the very essence of Ethan's passion was magnetic. Tara's laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by confusion etched across her face. Ethan pressed on, exhilaration rising in him. "I'm trying to create something that tells a story." Suddenly he felt lighter, the burden of Tara's words dissipating. Oliver nodded, his expression thoughtful. That's what fashion should be about, telling stories. His words fell across the cafe like a gentle wave, washing away the tension that had built up around Ethan ever since Tara had turned her gaze toward him. The question slipped from Ethan's lips before he could even catch himself. Hope blossomed in his chest, but disbelief washed over him. "Absolutely," Oliver replied, stepping closer, exuding encouragement. Tara shifted uncomfortably nearby, not knowing how to respond. The smile had vanished from her face entirely, replaced by an unexpected panicked silence. Only moments ago she was the one against Ethan, and now the very founder she worshipped was standing right before him, a lifeline thrown in a stormy sea. For Ethan, this was more than just validation, it was a turning point. This was the moment when the boy hiding in the cafe transformed into a hopeful creator stepping into the light. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice a steady release of emotions, relief spilling over the edges. As Oliver continued speaking, their conversation drew in more energy. Tara and her friends, once filled with laughter, now resembled shadows at the edge of a spotlight. There was an undeniable shift. The power balance had cracked, tilting in Ethan's favor. Oliver leaned in closer, intrigued. He asked, as if they were two artists discussing the depths of creativity rather than a founder and an aspiring creator. Ethan launched into an explanation of his inspirations, recounting late nights, early mornings, and the stories he wanted to tell through fabric and thread. He could feel the passion bubbling up, transforming self-doubt into self-assurance. As he spoke, the noise of the cafe faded into the background. There was only him and Oliver, the world outside continuing its busy dance, but for them, time had frozen. Ethan shared his dreams, his visions of one day showing in New York Fashion Week, of draping his designs over real bodies and knowing they resonated. Tara suddenly stepped forward, her voice almost urgent. But who would really wear that? The once confident girl seemed fragile now, and her words came out tempered by uncertainty instead of bravado. Oliver turned toward her, brow raised. He asked, "Is it about the creator or the critic?" With that, the cafe felt alive. Those loyal to Tara became nervous, unsure of where to focus their laughter. Tension hung in the air, shifting, dismantling the echoes of mockery, creating space for something greater. Ethan's heart soared as Oliver addressed Tara's comment. It fueled the fire burning inside him, forging a newfound confidence. He wanted to shout that clothing was a canvas, that everyone had the right to embrace their story, no matter their appearance. Oliver turned back to Ethan, beaming with encouragement. "You've got something special here, I can see it, keep pursuing it." The sheer kindness in his tone felt like armor around Ethan's vulnerability. Suddenly the door swung open once more, another burst of cold air flooding in. A couple of Ethan's friends happened to stroll in, their conversation stopping dead as they spotted Oliver. The buzz of recognition and excitement swirled around them. Ethan's world grew larger with every passing moment. It wasn't just him standing in that cafe anymore. It was Ethan backed by support, possibility unfurling before him. Tara and her friends shrank away, fading into the background, their laughter replaced by the real joy of connection around something meaningful. As laughter spread through the crowd, Oliver reached out, extending his hand to Ethan. "Let's collaborate someday, yeah." Ethan felt a rush of emotions, disbelief colliding with pure joy. He grasped Oliver's hand firmly, realizing this could be the beginning of a path he had longed for. It was the kind of twist no one could have predicted, an unexpected turn in a world that had felt so unwelcoming just moments ago. The moment held weight, magnifying the lessons tucked away in laughter. In that handshake, the messages of self-acceptance and perseverance bled together into something real and powerful. As the cafe erupted into smiles and supportive chatter, Ethan felt himself shed those lingering shadows of doubt. Every stitch he'd created became more than fabric lashed together. They transformed into stories, the essence of who he was. Standing there, he understood that despite the voices that tried to diminish him, there were also voices ready to uplift, to inspire. In a sea of opinions, only his mattered in the long run. The laughter that once stung faded into the warmth of possibilities. And while that carefree girl caught in the haze of arrogance might never change, Ethan knew he was stepping toward the light where his dreams took form. On that day in the cafe, Ethan emerged not as a victim of mockery, but as a bold creator determined to dive deeper into his passion. His heart found a rhythm, a melody of purpose, and he walked out of that cafe knowing that with courage, anything was achievable. It was a cold, overcast day when Ethan stepped into the vibrant cafe known as Brew, the hub of creativity nestled in the heart of the city. The scent of freshly brewed coffee embraced him like an old friend. He always felt inspired here, surrounded by the clinking of cups and whispers of dreams. Little did he know that today, this warm haven would transform into a battleground of self-worth. As he settled into his usual corner, fingers poised over the keyboard, Ethan was lost in his thoughts. He had spent countless nights sketching his vision for a clothing line, one that radiated authenticity, something more than fabric stitched together. Today was meant to be productive. He could almost see his designs walking down runways, his dreams taking flight, but then she walked in. Tara entered the cafe like a gust of wind, laughter trailing behind her like a shimmering cape. With her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit, she commanded attention effortlessly. Her friends followed, a flock of admirers ready to soak up her radiant energy. It didn't take long for Tara's eyes to land on Ethan. "Look at that guy," she said, loud enough for him to hear. A chorus of giggles erupted around her, each laugh slicing through the warm ambience of the cafe. Ethan felt his heart drop. The warmth dissipated, replaced by cold shame. He glanced at his worn hoodie and frayed jeans, suddenly self-conscious. How could he share his vision of a clothing line when he looked like this? As the laughter echoed in his mind, he tried to ignore it, futilely pushing the weight of their words aside. Tara continued, leaning back in her chair, a smirk plastered on her face, eyes glinting with delight over the attention. Her friends chimed in, their laughter further digging into Ethan's resolve. It wasn't the first time he had faced mockery, but today felt particularly stinging. His confidence felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Yet beneath the laughter, something inside him stirred, a defiance that said he had every right to dream, no matter how he dressed. As the shame wrapped around him, the cafe door swung open again. This time it wasn't just a gust of cold air. It was Oliver Finn, the founder of a prestigious fashion brand that made waves in the industry. His presence was magnetic, like a magnet drawing the eyes of everyone in the cafe. He strolled in, exuding confidence and creativity, and in that moment everyone turned toward him. Tara's laughter faded, replaced by gasps of awe. "Mr." Voice rose as she bounded toward him, her earlier jibes forgot. What an honor. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off Oliver. He was everything Ethan aspired to be: bold, confident, and unapologetically himself. Ethan's heart raced with equal parts excitement and fear. This was the man whose designs showcased on countless runways, whose name was synonymous with success. Yet in the midst of the awe, Tara saw her opportunity. She pointed at Ethan, the victim who now became the center of the spotlight. "You should see him." The laughter returned, bubbling up like boiling water on a stove. Ethan felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. The warmth from Oliver's entrance dissipated as Tara's words sunk deep. Could she really not see the passion behind his plans? Did she think clothes defined a person's dreams? But before he could retreat further into himself, Oliver turned and locked eyes with Ethan. It felt like the world had slowed down. Time froze as the crowd fell silent, an unspoken bond forming in that brief moment of connection. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Did Oliver see him? Did he recognize the determination that flickered behind the uncertainty in Ethan's eyes? "Hey there," Oliver said, his voice steady as he approached Ethan. The crowd held its breath, and even Tara paled, suddenly unsure how the king of fashion would react. Ethan was dumbstruck. Could this really be happening? I'm working on a clothing line," he stammered, each word barely escaping his lips. Sweat gathered at his brow. Oliver nodded, leaning in closer, genuinely interested. "That's incredible." His enthusiasm poured like light in a dim room, cutting through the weight of Tara's laughter and transforming the atmosphere. Tara opened her mouth to protest, but Oliver turned to her, his expression firm. "What matters is the vision behind the creation, not the clothes people wear in the moment." For Ethan, the change was palpable. He could feel the weight of mockery lifting, replaced by a hard-won sense of validation. Oliver Finn was standing before him, not just acknowledging him, but inviting him into the conversation. With each unsteady breath, Ethan could feel confidence rising. "I just want to make something that resonates, you know." Tara's laughter had faded to an uncertain silence, and the cafe atmosphere shifted. With every passionate word Ethan spoke, he could almost visualize his designs taking shape. He described the late nights spent sketching, the thrill of a new concept born in solitude. Ava and Mia, his friends who had just entered, stood at the door, pride glimmering in their eyes as they witnessed the transformation unfolding. As if sensing the change, Oliver's gaze grew warmer. "That kind of passion is rare," he said, sincerity etched on his face. "Keep pursuing it." With those words, Ethan felt propelled into a new realm of possibilities. The laughter from Tara and her friends paled in tight contrast to Oliver's encouragement. It was no longer a battle of wills, but a celebration of self-expression. Oliver continued, his voice inviting as he gestured toward the seat across from Ethan. For a moment, it felt surreal, as though the universe had realigned to grant Ethan an opportunity he had only ever dreamt of. Tentatively, Ethan reached for his sketchbook, resting on the edge of the table. He began, flipping through pages filled with colors and ideas. As he showcased his designs, Ethan felt a warmth grow within him. Each sketch illustrated a piece of himself, a burst of creativity bursting forth in vivid colors and intricate details. He watched as Oliver examined them, a smile growing on his face. "This is brilliant," Oliver said after a while, eyes gleaming with genuine admiration. "You have a voice." And in that moment, with Tara standing nearby, her smirk washed away, Ethan felt as if he had transcended into a space of newfound self-acceptance. He was no longer just the kid with the tattered clothes, he was a creator with a vision. The cafe buzzed with energy. Oliver's endorsement transformed the previously skeptical crowd as chatter surged around Ethan. Conversations swirled in a cacophony of excitement, dreams bold enough to reshape the narrative. With the barriers of mockery crumbling around him, Ethan shared not just his designs, but the stories behind them. Passion flowed like water, carving paths through rocky terrain. His words ignited hope, and the cafe space morphed into a haven where dreams collided with reality. "Clothing can inspire," Ethan declared, growing animated. As the laughter that once haunted him faded into background noise, Tara found herself at a crossroads. The confidence of Oliver contrasted sharply with her earlier bravado. With every nod and smile from the cafe patrons, she realized that her comments had lost their potency. The founder of a fashion empire shook hands with the aspiring creator. It was a connection forged on respect, vision, and the shared understanding of what began as vulnerability. With each passing moment, Ethan could feel the tide turning, no longer swept away by the currents of mockery, but instead carving his journey against them. He drew strength from Oliver's mentoring presence, a promise of possibilities unfolding. "Maybe I can show at New York Fashion Week one day," he mused aloud, imagining the rush of creativity linked with collaboration, the designs flowing from his heart and mind to the world stage. Oliver laughed, a sound filled with encouragement. "You'll get there." With this newfound camaraderie, the cafe morphed from a setting of mockery into a beacon of inspiration, reinforcing that the heart of fashion lies not in the surface but in the stories beneath. The days that followed seemed brighter for Ethan. He found solace in sketching, a determination burning brighter than before. He revisited his designs, infusing them with nostalgia, hope, and vibrancy. Each stitch and thread became a piece of his journey, turning the ridicule he faced into a stepping stone toward greatness. As Ethan prepared for a small showcase of his work, he remembered that chilly cafe day, the laughter, the doubt, but also the unexpected encouragement. They stitched together a narrative that transformed mockery into motivation as he navigated his burgeoning dreams. With certainty blooming in his heart and fire in his soul, he stepped onto the path that would eventually lead him to where he always belonged, a place where vulnerability blooms into resilience and the whispers of laughter now become the backdrop of his success. In the end, Ethan discovered that sometimes life throws us unexpected challenges etched in laughter or mockery, but within those moments we can choose to rise up, shake hands with our dreams, and let stories unfold loud and proud, stitched not from fabric but from courage itself. He stood at the edge of the cafe, the quiet hum of chatter swirling around him like an invisible fog. Ethan looked down at his worn sneakers and the faded hoodie that hugged his frame. Just yesterday, he had felt a faint spark of hope as he dreamed of launching his own clothing line. But today, as he crossed the threshold into Bean and Brew, that hope felt buried under layers of doubt. Seizing a corner table, he opened his laptop and began to drown out the noise around him with visions of vibrant fabrics and stunning designs. This cafe was his sanctuary, a place where he could breathe freely and let his creativity flow. But the moment he absorbed the lively atmosphere, a shadow loomed over his inspiration. Tara's voice cut through the air, sharp and mocking. Standing with a group of her friends, she punctuated her words with laughter that rippled through the cafe. Eyes turned toward Ethan, bright with expectation. He instinctively sank lower in his seat, trying to disappear into the shadows. Tara, with her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit, was the queen of the room. It stung to be the focus of her ridicule. She tossed her head back, giggling, her friends joining in on the farcical applause. A hot wave of humiliation washed over Ethan. He had faced mockery before, but the sting always found a way to sink deeper. It settled in his stomach, an unwelcome visitor that refused to leave. Didn't they understand? These clothes didn't define him, they were placeholders while he chased a dream. Ethan was not just a boy in a hoodie. He was an artist, a creator caught in a world that often failed to recognize the value of passion over appearance. Yet in this crowded cafe, surrounded by laughter, that truth felt impossibly distant. People often spoke about vulnerability and bravery, but in this moment felt like a cruel joke. While Tara thrived on attention, Ethan withered under scrutiny. He wished he could shout that he was on the verge of something big, that he was crafting designs filled with meaning and emotion. But in the suffocating weight of Tara's laughter, the words dried up. But just as the discomfort began to feel unbearable, the cafe door swung open with a gust of cold air. In strolled Oliver Finn, the founder of a fashion empire that had captivated the industry. The moment he stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. His presence demanded respect and admiration like an electric charge filling the air. Ethan's attention snapped to Oliver, the man who had become a beacon of inspiration in his dreams. The rich, inviting scent of coffee and the sounds of chatter faded into a distant hum. He was frozen, eyes wide, heart pounding as Oliver walked confidently toward the counter. Tara's laughter faltered, her demeanor shifting from carefree to starstruck as she rushed over to Oliver. "Mr. Finn," she gushed, her previous mockery evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Ethan watched, a mix of awe and envy bubbling within him. While Tara was immersed in her attempt to capture Oliver's attention, Ethan felt a flicker of hope ignite. What if Oliver saw through the laughter? What if he recognized the passion behind Ethan's humble attire? But Tara wasn't finished. She turned, a glimmer of mischievous delight in her eyes. "You should see that guy over there." In that instant, every eye shifted toward Ethan, laughter bubbling up again. Something in him snapped. As Ethan straightened his back, anger surged through him. He wouldn't give in to their taunts. He could feel the fire within his soul pushing him to stand tall. He dared to believe that maybe he was worth more than the clothes draping his frame. With a quiet determination, Ethan lifted his gaze to meet Oliver's. In that split second, their eyes locked, and the world around them faded away. The moment felt electric, a connection that transcended the mockery and criticism swirling in the cafe. "Hey there," Oliver called out, stepping away from Tara and her group, his kind eyes focused on Ethan. The surrounding chatter hushed abruptly, as if the universe conspired to give them this moment of connection. Oliver inquired, genuine curiosity lacing his voice as he approached Ethan. The authenticity of the question surprised him, knocking the wind from his sails and replacing the weight of self-doubt with an exhilarating sense of possibility. Ethan's heart raced. "I'm working on a clothing line," he said finally, his voice steadier than expected. Oliver nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Fashion is about so much more than just clothes. It's about expression, identity." In that moment, Tara's laughter hung in the air, almost frozen, but it no longer felt powerful against the warmth radiating from Oliver. Ethan's pulse quickened, and he felt the pressure of their past exchanges fade away. He began to share ideas, speaking about his designs, the messages woven through each thread. "Every piece I create has a story," he explained, his passion shimmering in his eyes. "It's about vulnerability, strength, and authenticity." Oliver's expression shifted from interest to admiration. "That's incredible, Ethan. Your vision is what sets you apart." Tara's smug satisfaction crumbled as she watched. It was a transformation she never expected to witness, a shift from mockery to admiration. The laughter that once echoed around her now fell away, replaced by a sense of understanding and respect. Ethan couldn't believe it. Barely moments ago, he felt like the subject of derision, and now he was standing before someone who genuinely valued his art. It was an electric moment, charged with everything he had dreamed of but never thought possible. Oliver stepped closer, genuinely engaged. His request sent a jolt of enthusiasm through Ethan. He wanted to show Oliver everything, the designs filled with dreams, heart, and meticulous care. With trembling hands, he reached for his sketchbook, flipping it open to reveal pages that held a slice of his soul. "I've been working on a collection inspired by the idea of resilience," he explained, revealing sketches of garments that symbolized growth and strength. As Oliver leaned over his sketches, Ethan felt a rush of confidence. "This is beautiful," Oliver said, his enthusiasm infectious. Ethan, those words felt like a lifeline, pulling him away from the shadows of doubt he had haunted for too long. With each affirmation from Oliver, he felt the weight of Tara's mockery dissolve. The cafe began to rejuvenate with energy, patrons drawn into shy conversations about Ethan's work. Tara stood, a mere shadow of herself, and the laughter that had once filled the air began to shift. "Clothing has the power to inspire, to change perspectives," Ethan continued, emboldened by Oliver's presence. As he spoke, Tara's demeanor shifted from disdain to discomfort, confusion crinkling her brow. Conversations rekindled around them, leaving her standing on the outside. Ethan challenged, raising an eyebrow as he locked eyes with Tara, the earlier laughter now a distant memory. The room seemed to swell with a collective breath of fresh air as Tara faltered. Oliver's presence fortified Ethan's resolve, bolstering his voice as he stated his truth. The heart of the cafe beat in rhythm with the unfolding moment, one boy transforming into a beacon of authenticity and a voice of inspiration. "Follow your dreams, no matter who you are or what you wear," Oliver advised, looking straight at Ethan, who felt lighter with every word. "Believe in your vision and don't be afraid to share it." As Tara finally retreated from the limelight, Ethan began to understand the weight of awareness. The journey he had embarked on, filled with trials, turned into a profound lesson in vulnerability and strength. His words became a testament to overcoming self-doubt, transcending into the realm of authenticity. With Oliver at his side, he felt a surge of pride. This was no longer just about fashion or ridicule. It was about forging new connections and standing firmly in one's truth. In that moment, Ethan understood something essential. His value didn't come from the clothes he wore, but from the courage to showcase his passion. Tara's laughter fell away as real joy began to take its place, intertwined with hope and validation. As time went on, conversations continued to bubble through the air, breathing life into the cafe atmosphere. Ethan's sketches drew in curious eyes and nods of approval, while Tara faded into an unrecognizable presence in the background. United by creativity, laughter echoed through the cafe, guided by the recognition that real passion breaks through barriers. With renewed strength, Ethan reflected on the unexpected nature of that day. How something as simple as a moment in time could shape perspectives and redefine worth. What once felt like a source of shame had blossomed into a celebration of authenticity and resilience. As Ethan took a step forward, ready to seize the opportunities that lay ahead, he felt grateful. He had turned mockery into motivation, ridicule into recognition. The possibility of creating a clothing line, of walking the path of his dreams, was no longer a distant thought. Ethan had discovered his voice, and with it, a newfound purpose that resonated deeply. Surrounded by the love and strength of community, he stepped out into a world ripe with potential, ready to embrace a future that honored both his creativity and his journey. And as he and Oliver exchanged a firm handshake, nestled within that quiet cafe, Ethan knew he wasn't just a boy in a hoodie. He was a creator forging his own path towards something extraordinary. The cafe buzzed with energy, a warm haven filled with the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee and the soft hum of quiet conversations. Ethan perched at a small table in the corner, his laptop open, fingers poised over the keys. He was lost in a world of creativity, sketching designs for his dream clothing line. Each stroke of his pencil was infused with passion, hope, and dreams of a future where he would share his vision with the world. But just as inspiration flowed through him like a river, a voice broke through, sharp, cutting, and all too familiar. Tara's laughter rang out, laced with mockery. Her group of friends erupted into giggles, their eyes flickering toward Ethan like sparrows taking flight at the sound of a predator's call. His heart sank. He felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. How could she still be doing this? Tara was the epitome of a privileged lifestyle, stylish clothes, perfect hair, effortlessly charismatic. To her, Ethan was just a kid in a hoodie and worn-out jeans, a target for her light-hearted jabs that felt anything but harmless. She continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The laughter that followed resonated in a way that made Ethan want to find a hole to crawl into. He hadn't chosen his outfit to impress anyone. This was comfort, safety, the armor he wore while battling the uncertainty of his dreams. Feeling the heat rise in his cheeks, Ethan glanced down at his clothes, suddenly aware of how they made him feel smaller, weaker, less worthy. It was a familiar sensation, a recurring theme whenever Tara decided to showcase her self-proclaimed superiority. He wanted to shout back, to explain that what he was creating wasn't just clothes, but a vision that deserved respect. Yet the words caught in his throat like stones, heavy and burdensome. Around him, the chatter of the cafe ebbed and flowed, but all he could hear was Tara's mocking laughter ringing in his ears. A moment of despair washed over him, mixed with a flicker of defiance. What did she really know about style, or about dreams? As if summoned by fate, the door swung open with a jingle, ushering in a gust of cold air that shifted the atmosphere. It was Oliver Finn, the founder of a celebrated fashion brand renowned for its innovative designs and boundary-pushing aesthetic. His reputation preceded him, and the moment he entered, the energy in the room transformed. People turned, faces lighting up with recognition. Tara's laughter wavered, her eyes widening as she basked in the presence of someone she considered worthy. "Oh wow, mister," she exclaimed, her earlier bravado quickly replaced by a facade of charm and favor. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he watched Oliver walk to the counter, exuding confidence with every step. For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded into a distant hum, leaving only the weight of Ethan's thoughts. Could he muster the courage to talk to Oliver, to share his ideas, his dreams? Before he could process his swirling emotions, Tara caught Oliver's attention. "You should see this guy over here," she said, pointing directly at Ethan. There it was again, the heat of embarrassment rising, mixed with the sharp taste of anger in his mouth. Ethan felt the world crumbling around him. Tara's laughter erupted again, but this time it was more of a mock salute, dismissing him as if he were nothing. All eyes turned to him, dissecting him, judging him, but then something unexpected happened. Oliver turned to Ethan, his brow furrowing slightly as if assessing the situation. There was an intensity in his gaze, something that made Ethan's heart race. For a brief moment, the crowd and its critiques faded away, and it felt as though time stood still. "Wait a second," Oliver said, taking a step toward Ethan. The room grew quiet, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Ethan was overwhelmed. It's Ethan," he managed to stammer. It felt like the whole cafe was holding its breath. Ethan, Oliver mused, the name rolling off his tongue as if it carried weight. Every drop of mockery, every laugh Tara had thrown his way, melted in the warmth of Oliver's interest. "I'm working on a clothing line," Ethan said, the words tumbling forth with unexpected courage. Oliver's eyes lit up and an honest smile crept across his face. "That's fantastic. Fashion is all about storytelling." The cheering crowd shifted, Tara's face contorted in confusion and irritation. Seriously, he thinks he's going to make a line, but her words fell flat against the resurgence of voices in the cafe, interested now, not in mocking but in listening. Ethan spoke about his vision designs centered around vulnerability and authenticity. He felt a surge of confidence. He illustrated his concept, each garment representing a different journey, a different struggle, a breath of inspiration meant to resonate with anyone who wore it. Oliver stepped closer, nodding along, genuinely intrigued. "I'd love to see what you've created," Oliver said, his tone turning sincere. In that moment, Ethan made a choice. No longer would Tara's words define him. He opened his sketchbook, revealing his carefully drawn designs. Each page was a piece of his heart, reflecting the struggles he faced and the dreams he dared to chase. The cafe shimmered with electric energy. As Oliver examined the sketches, Ethan spoke on what each piece represented, his passion spilling out into the open air. Tara's laughter was replaced by the hushed murmurs of appreciation. People moved closer, drawn into Ethan's world, captivated by the stories woven into his designs. Oliver's eyes gleamed with admiration. "These are beautiful, Ethan." Tara gaped, the realization dawning that the moment she tried to mock it turned into a blossoming conversation that validated everything Ethan had always believed inside. She started, but the words faltered, failing to carry relevance against the newfound excitement vibrating throughout the cafe. "Clothes don't make the creator," Oliver interjected firmly. "What matters is the vision behind them." With each affirmation from Oliver, Ethan felt like the chains binding his spirit began to break. The laughter that once haunted him faded into whispers of respect. Surrounding him now was a collective belief in his vision, a community coalescing around the essence of creativity. Ethan watched as Tara's confidence shrank in the face of Oliver's endorsement. Her usual posture faltered, eyes darting around as if looking for allies in a landscape that had suddenly shifted. "I don't get it," Tara muttered, trying to recapture her earlier stance, but the room had changed. People rallied around Ethan, endorsing his dreams, while the audience she had once commanded began to see through her facade. "Clothing should be about self-expression, authenticity, and empowerment," Ethan reiterated. He felt emboldened, ready to dive deeper into his truth. The cafe sang with energy, filled with discussions about creativity and the power of voice. Oliver leaned in, giving Ethan his full attention, and for the first time that day, Ethan felt seen. "What you're doing is important," Oliver said. In that moment, the laughter that once felt like daggers now transformed into a foundation on which Ethan could build. The validation from Oliver shifted the narrative. Tara's voice, once so loud, now trembled in confusion, its power evaporating into the atmosphere. Time seemed to shift and warp around them, and with every encouraging affirmation from Oliver, Ethan grew taller, stronger, and surer. He was no longer just a boy in worn-out clothes. He was a creator, a visionary with a story worth sharing, one that couldn't be silenced by superficial judgments. With renewed determination, Ethan took a deep breath, ready to embrace the possibility of his dreams taking flight. The cafe's warmth enveloped him, charging him with hope. He felt a kinship with those gathered around, united by their shared belief that purpose prevailed over appearance. As Oliver continued to engage with Ethan, the door swung open again, ushering in fresh air and a sense of renewal. People stepped in and took notice. Conversations pivoted around Ethan's designs and ideas. It was no longer about Tara's mocking laughter. It had transformed into a dialogue of inspiration and creativity. Ethan would later reflect on that day as a turning point. What began as a moment steeped in embarrassment had become an exchange of courage, a space where laughter morphed into appreciation. Tara's jealousy had turned into obscurity in the face of genuine dialogue, and as Oliver extended his hand toward Ethan, the solidity of their connection felt like a promise that dreams could materialize with passion leading the way. "Let's collaborate. I'd love to see how we can bring your vision to life," Oliver said, his sincerity wrapping around Ethan like a warm embrace. Standing in that bustling cafe, surrounded by support, Ethan felt lucky, invincible. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: he would navigate it wearing his own truth like armor. The doors of possibility stood wide open, and with each step forward, he bravely entered the world, ready to share his designs and embrace the stories yet to be told. Tara's laughter, which once carried the weight of ridicule, now served as a reminder that resistance often ignites growth. Ethan emerged, wiser and filled with a sense of purpose, knowing that authenticity could be the strongest currency in a world obsessed with appearances. As he stepped into the future, he held into the knowledge that dreams, even those tucked away in a quiet cafe, could one day shine brightly, especially when bolstered by courage and love for one's craft. The warmth greeted him like a cozy embrace, and the rich aroma of coffee filled the air, wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. He loved this place, a hub of creativity where ideas flowed as freely as the coffee. But that day would turn out to be anything but ordinary. Settling into his favorite corner table, Ethan opened his laptop and began to sketch designs for his clothing line. He had been working hard on this dream, pouring countless nights into creating pieces that represented more than just fabric. They carried his soul, his struggles, and his aspirations. But then, like a dark cloud creeping in, Tara entered, bringing with her a wave of laughter. With perfectly styled hair and clothes that looked like they belonged on a runway, she exuded confidence. "Look at that guy," she said, pointing straight at Ethan. A wave of discomfort washed over Ethan. He felt the weight of her words shove him down, much like a heavy anchor pulling him underwater. He glanced at his outfit, a faded hoodie and frayed jeans. It was casual but not unintentional. Comfort was essential when you're spending hours sketching and dreaming. Laughter erupted from Tara's friends, mingling with the sounds of the cafe. It stung more than he expected. He lowered his gaze, hiding behind his laptop, hoping the floor would open up and swallow him whole. Deep down, he knew that he wasn't just fighting an outsider's judgment. He battled the weight of his own insecurities. "Fashion police," Tara continued, her words dripping with mockery. Each laugh echoed around him, amplifying the feelings of embarrassment and inadequacy that he tried so hard to keep at bay. But today, something inside him flickered. Enough was enough. Ethan had spent years honing his craft, dreaming of a future that felt almost within reach. While Tara reveled in her moment of spotlight, the door to the cafe swung open with an almost cinematic flair. A gust of chilly wind swept into the room, but it didn't carry just the cold. It heralded a figure who could ignite hopes and dreams. There stood Oliver Finn, a fashion mogul known for his groundbreaking designs and infectious energy. The entire atmosphere shifted as Oliver strode in, his presence commanding immediate respect. He captured the attention of everyone in the cafe. Even the barista paused mid-order, almost dropping the milk frother. People whispered, eyes widening as they processed who had just entered. Ethan's heart raced, but it felt different this time. This was not just a celebrity. This was a man who had built a career on innovation and creativity, someone who could understand the heart of fashion. Ethan felt an odd mix of excitement and apprehension. Could he muster the courage to speak to him? Tara, noticing the shift in energy, quickly transitioned from a queen of mockery to a courtier. "Mr. Finn," she exclaimed, rushing over, leaving her friends behind as they dashed to follow. Ethan watched, mesmerized, as Oliver engaged effortlessly with the crowd. But then Tara, never one to miss an opportunity, turned her attention back to Ethan. "You should talk to him," she called out, a smirk still dancing on her lips. The laughter that followed roared like a wave crashing against a cliff. But this time the energy felt different. Ethan's stomach twisted, not from shame, but from a strange cocktail of anger and resolve. This was not just a dreamer against a bully. This was turning into a declaration, a stand against mockery in favor of self-respect. Suddenly, Oliver turned toward Ethan. Their eyes locked, and it was as if the world faded away. In that moment, Ethan felt seen. There was an intensity in Oliver's gaze that sparked something within him. Before he could lose his nerve, he stood up. "I design clothes," he said, his voice steady but his heart racing. Oliver took a step closer, genuine intrigue lighting up his features. "That's incredible." Ethan felt the weight of the past few moments shift. "I want to create a clothing line that tells a story." The words spilled out, full of fierce honesty. Tara's laughter faded into silence, her expression morphing from amusement to confusion. As Oliver listened intently, Ethan felt a surge of validation wash over him, a wave that crashed away the remnants of Tara's mockery. "Fashion is about more than just clothes," Oliver said, nodding. "It's about identity, creativity, and passion. You have to embrace what makes you unique." Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Absolutely," Oliver replied, that warm smile still gracing his lips. The cafe felt electric as eyes turned toward Ethan, curiosity replacing judgment. Tara stood frozen, realizing the tide was shifting. With a deep breath, Ethan reached for his sketchbook, heart pounding with exhilaration. He flipped open the pages, revealing sketches filled with colors and designs that spoke of resilience and beauty. "This piece represents overcoming fear," he explained, his confidence growing with each word. Oliver leaned in closer, scrutinizing each detail with genuine interest. "Wow, there's something special here," he said, the admiration in his voice palpable. "You have a talent for capturing emotion in your art." For the first time, Ethan sensed a shift in his entire world. Tara's words fell silent as she watched the scene unravel. The laughter that had once felt like daggers now evaporated. Instead, the cafe breathed life into something powerful: community and understanding. "I never thought I'd find inspiration here," Oliver continued. "You're doing something important." Tara looked visibly uncomfortable, the smugness fading from her face. But she stammered, trying to reclaim her position, but the effort was futile. Ethan locked eyes with her and felt a newfound strength wash over him. "Clothing is a canvas," he asserted. With each passing moment, the laughter that filled the cafe began to shift. Ethan stepped further into the light, revealing not just his designs, but his heart and purpose. Encouragement rippled through the crowd, a network of newfound support rising to the surface. People nearby began to chime in, sharing their thoughts and ideas. The atmosphere swelled with energy, echoing Ethan's passion. They were no longer spectators, they were advocates, inspired by the authenticity unfolding before them. "I love the message behind this collection," one woman said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Ethan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you." As they continued to discuss his designs, Oliver moved closer, encouraging Ethan to share even more. "Your voice is strong, keep using it." Every word from Oliver felt like fuel to Ethan's growing fire. The energy in the cafe transformed from mockery to support, beauty rising in a symphony of creativity. Tara stood, mouth agape, as the spotlight shifted away from her and toward Ethan, who was finally stepping into his identity. With every affirmation, Ethan expanded his vision. He spoke about future ideas, collections inspired by his personal journey. He felt lighter, the burden of judgment lifted, an anchor that had weighed him down suddenly becoming a buoy guiding him toward brighter horizons. "Let's collaborate," Oliver declared as the conversation flowed effortlessly. "Your designs deserve a bigger audience, and I'd love to help you bring them to life." The words hung in the air, sending exhilaration coursing through Ethan's veins. This was no longer just a dream, it was becoming reality, tangled with new possibilities and hope. His heart swelled with pride, the validation so heavy it almost brought tears to his eyes. Tara stood a few paces back, each heartbeat pulling her further from the attention she once reveled in. She had exchanged her power for a fleeting laugh, losing her grip on the narrative. The realization stung, but it was a revelation Ethan didn't need to witness. He was busy building something meaningful. The cafe had become a vibrant tapestry woven from threads of inspiration, creativity, and passion. Each conversation around them cultivated a culture of support where vulnerability transformed into strength. Days would come and go, but that moment would forever remain etched in their memories. Ethan was no longer just the target of ridicule. He was a dreamer, a creator, and an embodiment of what it meant to chase one's aspirations. As the crowd continued to buzz with encouragement, Ethan recognized the profound lesson he had learned. Authenticity outweighs appearance, and true strength lies in being unapologetically oneself. That day, surrounded by newfound allies and reinforced by Oliver's unwavering belief in him, Ethan stepped forward into a brighter future. He would embrace the journey ahead, armed with the knowledge that dreams are worth pursuing regardless of the noise around them. Sometimes, what seems like the end mockery and shame can become the catalyst for a powerful transformation. What began as an unfathomable insult became the foundation for a rising star. With every sketch and aspiration, he would carry those moments with him, a beacon of hope against the storm of doubt. And as he navigated the world of fashion, fueled by passion and fortitude, Ethan stepped into the light, ready to tell his own story, one design at a time. The cafe door swung open, and Ethan stepped inside, the familiar warmth wrapping around him like a much-needed hug. The smell of brewing coffee filled the air, mingling with the laughter and chatter of patrons, fueling the creative energy that inspired him. He settled into his favorite corner table, his sanctuary for sketching and dreaming. Ethan always brought an open heart and a tattered sketchbook, filled with designs that carried stories of hope and struggle. He dreamed of starting his own clothing line, not for fame or fortune, but as a means to express his truth. His clothes would tell stories of resilience, of vulnerability, and of wearing one's scars with pride, but today felt different. Just as he began to lose himself in his drawings, a raucous burst of laughter erupted nearby, sharp enough to break the delicate bubble of creativity he had surrounded himself with. He glanced over only to find Tara, the queen of the social scene, surrounded by her loyal entourage. "Look at that guy," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. The laughter that followed was insidious, weaving its way through the cafe and wrapping around Ethan like a vice. Heat rushed to his cheeks. He was aware of what he was wearing, a frayed hoodie and a pair of jeans that had seen better days. He was not trying to impress anyone, he was just trying to be himself. But Tara's words pierced through his resolve, and he quickly looked down at the page in front of him, praying that invisibility would come to his rescue. The whispers intensified. Someone called from the back, more laughter ensued, and Ethan felt a painful twist in his gut. There it was, the familiar feeling of being ridiculed, of being made to feel small. It wasn't the first time, and he knew it wouldn't be the last, but today it hurt more than usual. Why did it matter what he wore? Didn't they understand how much love and effort he poured into his designs? What did Tara know about the stories behind the cloth, the dreams stitched into every seam? She was simply draped in labels, floating on the surface of a world that often misunderstood the true essence of fashion. Lost in his spiral of thoughts, Ethan barely noticed when the cafe door swung open again. A chill rushed in, and several heads turned. That chill, however, was soon replaced by an electric buzz of recognition. It was Oliver Finn, the founder of one of the most famous fashion brands in the world, a visionary whose name echoed through the industry. The room held its breath, and even Tara's laughter diminished, replaced by starstruck murmurs. Ethan's heart raced. He had followed Oliver's career, admired his bold designs that challenged norms and crushed boundaries. Could he seize this moment? Could he muster the courage to speak up, to be heard? As if sensing Ethan's internal battle, Oliver made his way further into the cafe. But Tara, sensing an opportunity, quickly sashayed over to him, her charisma sparkling brighter than ever. "Mr. Finn," she declared, transforming from mocker to admirer in the blink of an eye. Watching her interact with Oliver made Ethan feel both hopeful and anxious. If only he could get a moment's pause from the laughter and mockery that had enveloped him. Just as he contemplated raising his voice, Tara, still focused on impressing Oliver, glanced back at Ethan. "You really should come talk to him. Maybe he can help you with that." Their giggles returned, ringing in Ethan's ears like a melody he couldn't escape. But this time something inside him shifted. He wouldn't let her steal his thunder. Not today. Oliver's gaze flickered toward Ethan, and in that brief moment their eyes met. The world dissolved around them. There was no laughter, no judgment, just a connection that lifted Ethan from the shadows and filled him with an unexpected surge of courage. Oliver called out, stepping toward Ethan. Breathless, Ethan felt a knot in his throat. "I design clothes. I've been working on a line," he managed to say, rising to his feet. The room shifted again. Tara stood there, caught off guard. Suddenly, Ethan felt like he was in a different space, where Oliver's inquiry overshadowed any mockery thrown his way. "Wow, that's amazing," Oliver replied, an earnest smile creeping across his face. "What's your vision?" Ethan's heart swelled. For the first time, someone was truly interested. "I believe fashion can empower individuals to express their authentic selves." With each word, Ethan noticed Tara's composure shaky. The laughter that once cascaded around her now felt distant, replaced by genuine intrigue from the cafe's patrons. Oliver asked, his voice inviting. Ethan blinked in disbelief but nodded, eager to share. He opened his sketchbook, flipping through pages filled with vibrant designs and handwritten notes. "This one symbolizes breaking free from fear," he explained, his confidence growing as Oliver looked closely. "I can see the passion here," Oliver asserted, nodding with appreciation. As he examined each sketch, the cafe atmosphere underwent a radical transformation. Patrons leaned closer, intrigued by the designs that spoke volumes about Ethan's dreams. "I love this idea," a woman said, glancing at Ethan. "It's refreshing to see something so authentic." Ethan felt a surge of gratitude washing over him. This was what he had longed for, a space to share his dreams without judgment. Tara's laughter was replaced by sincere conversations about individuality and the importance of personal expression. "Keep going, Ethan," Oliver encouraged. "This is important work." Every word from Oliver felt like a lifeline pulling Ethan away from the depths of doubt. Standing there in a cafe packed with patrons, he felt the weight of Tara's earlier mockery lift, almost as if her laughter transformed into wings that supported him. Tara stood beside them, her bravado fading away. She crossed her arms, her once smug expression replaced with uncertainty. But she stuttered, a hint of desperation in her voice. Ethan turned to Oliver, who locked eyes with Tara, projecting a calm authority. "What defines style, Tara? Is it about the clothes themselves or the courage to wear them? Ethan is doing something important." A hush enveloped the cafe. It hung thick in the air, filled with anticipation. Tara shifted uncomfortably, the silence in contrast to her previous laughter. Each individual had begun to see beyond the surface, wondering how judgment became so easy when it masked true artistry. Ethan felt a surge of power, emboldened by Oliver's words. "Fashion should never be about tearing someone down," he declared, his voice steady. "It should uplift and allow us to explore who we are." With every word, he could see the crowd's perspective shift. Conversations ignited, discussions sparking as more people intermixed their thoughts with excitement. The once judgmental laughter morphed into an eager buzz. The patrons had transformed from passive observers to engaged supporters, celebrating what Ethan represented. "Ethan, I see potential in you," Oliver said, stepping even closer. "Your vision should not be limited by external judgments. Fashion is about taking risks, and you have that spark." Ethan's heart raced, hope filling the void left by ridicule. The room pulsed with support, and he realized he was no longer that lonely figure hiding in the corner. He was a creator stepping into the light. "Thank you," he said, emotion coating his voice. As the air buzzed with anticipation and excitement, Tara finally spoke up, her tone softer, less assured. "But what if enough?" Oliver interjected gently yet firmly. "This is Ethan's moment." And just like that, Tara stood sidelines, realizing her power had slipped away. She was no longer the main character in this story. That role had been claimed by Ethan, and the narrative he had courageously embraced. With eyes filled with admiration, Ethan realized the journey he had taken wasn't just about fashion, but about finding his voice in a world that often overlooked the vulnerable. Stories that emanated from his designs were now finding resonance, and he relished every moment. The laughter in the cafe simmered down to whispers, conversations blossoming around him, all inspired by the authenticity he now embodied. As patrons shared their own stories, Ethan felt a tide of connection sweep over him, turning mockery into solidarity and ideas into inspiration. With newfound confidence, he began to share more about his designs, the techniques he employed, the journeys behind each piece. People listened, eager to learn, hungry for the stories they had long missed in the world of fashion. "Let's work together," Oliver suggested, his enthusiasm infectious. "Your perspective could really make waves in the industry." Ethan's heart soared. In that moment, he felt the culmination of his struggles transform into a bright future, grounded in passion and creativity. His journey would fuel not just his dreams, but the dreams of others who often felt judged or overlooked. He wouldn't just be a designer, he would be an advocate for creative expression, a voice for the unheard. And all it took was a moment, one glorious, shining moment when he embraced his truth and let it radiate. Looking around the cafe, he witnessed Tara's facade of confidence dissipating. Without the laughter and judgment, she stood quiet, realizing that authenticity would always win over shallow observations. The cafe buzzed, alive with creativity. Laughter now transformed into something meaningful, something that connected everyone in that space. As Ethan stepped into this new landscape of possibilities, he embraced the magic of being unapologetically himself, feeling grateful that the day had unfolded in such a powerful way. In the end, it wasn't just about proving Tara wrong. It was about stepping into a world filled with supportive voices, celebrating those who dared to wear their stories on their sleeves. As he stood there with Oliver, surrounded by validation and support, he understood that the path ahead was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality filled with possibilities, each thread of his journey weaving together in a tapestry of hope, strength, and unyielding authenticity. Ethan perched on a high stool in the corner of the cafe, tapping away at his laptop with fervor. This cafe, Bean and Brew, was his sanctuary, a haven filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and creative energy. He lived for these moments, sketching out ideas for his clothing line that swirled in his mind like a vibrant storm. As he lifted his head to gather his thoughts, he became aware of the laughter. The voice cut through the air, sharp and mocking. Ethan's heart sank as he recognized it immediately. Tara, the self-proclaimed fashion queen of their college, had just walked in with her entourage. Her perfect hair danced as she pointed at him. She laughed again and her friends joined in, their giggles echoing in the cafe like a cruel chorus. Ethan instinctively looked down at his outfit, a faded hoodie and well-worn jeans. The comfort of his attire felt like a fortress, but in this moment it was as if it had turned into a prison. He wanted to shout, to tell her that what he wore didn't define him, but somehow the words wouldn't come. Instead, he felt the familiar knot of shame twisting in his stomach, tightening with every laugh that reverberated around him. This was not the first time he had been mocked for his clothes. Over the years, he had faced ridicule for many things: his style, his dreams, and even his passion for fashion, an industry that often valued the superficial over the profound. The harder he tried to ignore them, the more the laughter seeped under his skin. Tara leaned back, striking a pose, as if the panel of judges were watching, and he was the one being critiqued. "Honestly, I think I saw that outfit at a thrift store," she quipped, and her friends erupted into even more laughter. The world around Ethan closed in, each giggle wrapping around him, suffocating him. But today, something inside him shifted. He wasn't just going to sit there and let it happen. Deep down, he felt a flicker of rebellion ignite. He wanted to prove that dreams could be harder than appearances. Never one to back down completely, he lifted his chin. Then, just as if the universe decided to intervene, the cafe door swung open with a gust of cold air, sending a shiver through the room. This time, it wasn't just the weather that brought a sense of urgency. In stepped none other than Oliver Finn, the founder of one of the most successful fashion brands in the world. The atmosphere shifted instantly, a charged energy filling the cafe as heads turned to watch this fashion icon navigate through tables. Ethan had felt adrift until that moment, but now he was suddenly anchored by the gravity of Oliver's presence. Was this the moment he had been waiting for? Oliver made eye contact with Ethan, his gaze steady and engaging. But then Tara stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with the prospect of attention. "Mr. Finn," she waved her arms dramatically, drawing him closer like a moth to the flame. Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. Someone like Tara would surely know how to charm him, sweet-talk him into the spotlight. But he swallowed it down, each pang fueling a resolve to stand tall, to stand out in his own way. As Oliver chuckled and exchanged pleasantries, Tara pointed toward Ethan, her eyes flickering with mischief. "You should check out that guy over there." A wave of embarrassment washed over Ethan, but instead of sinking, he felt something rising inside him, a fierce determination. This was not just about defending his wardrobe, this was about defending his dreams. Oliver turned toward him, the laughter in the cafe fading into a profound silence. He asked, his voice steady, sincere. "Ethan," he replied, his heart racing, fighting the urge to shy away. Oliver's eyes gleamed with interest. "That's amazing." In that moment, a surge of confidence coursed through Ethan. "I want my designs to tell stories," he said, his voice gaining strength with each word. Tara's playful smirk faltered. The warmth of support began to ripple through the cafe as people leaned in, enraptured by the conversation that had just sparked. Oliver looked at Ethan intently, nodding in appreciation. "I love that." Ethan felt the energy shift. Patrons around him perked up, intrigued by this unexpected exchange. It felt like the room was holding its breath, waiting for the next words to unfold. Oliver's attention felt like validation, lifting Ethan's spirit higher than it had ever reached. Oliver asked, his curiosity genuine. Ethan could hardly believe it. This was his chance. He opened his worn sketchbook, heart pounding as he revealed his designs, a collection birthed from aching dreams and a longing to be understood. As Oliver leafed through the pages, his expression shifted from that of a casual viewer to someone genuinely engaged. "This is beautiful," he said, tilting his head in admiration. "You're capturing emotions in your designs." Ethan's heart swelled with pride. This was the moment he had longed for, the pinnacle of validation coming from the very person he admired. He could see Tara standing on the sidelines, her previous confidence evaporating. Her laughter, looping back to mockery, began to fade as she realized she held no power over this moment. With each new sketch, the cafe buzzed with a growing energy, patrons discussing the profound messages behind Ethan's designs. "You're telling a story and that story resonates," someone whispered at the table next to him. Oliver leaned closer, completely engrossed. "Your work has the potential to inspire people," he said, his voice rich with enthusiasm. As the room shifted from a sea of laughter to a storm of inspiration, Ethan realized his moment of triumph wasn't just about dismissing Tara's mockery. It was about embracing his truth in front of a crowd that finally saw him. But there was still a small part of him that lingered on the edge of uncertainty, waiting for Tara's final blow. "But he still looks," she began, but Oliver interrupted. He turned to her, the warmth of his voice cutting through the awkward tension. "You might not appreciate what you can't see, but that doesn't negate Ethan's passion or talent." The silence of the crowd became palpable, each moment stretching into infinity. Tara's expression twisted, her confidence shaken. The laughter that had once crowded the air around her suddenly became a distant memory, fading as the cafe buzzed with appreciation for Ethan. Ethan realized then that he had stood at the precipice of judgment and had chosen to step forward into a world filled with respect and admiration. He felt an exhilarating rush, each heartbeat reverberating with the thrill of opportunity. He was no longer hiding behind the shadows. He was stepping into the spotlight. "Let's collaborate," Oliver said, extending a hand toward Ethan, his grin wide and inviting. "Let's bring your vision to life." Ethan stood in shock, feeling the weight of those words settle in his chest. This was not just a fleeting moment of validation. This was an invitation to step onto a path he had only dared to dream about. But before he could respond, Tara suddenly interjected, her voice shaky yet laced with desperation. "But you don't know him." The room went quiet as all eyes shifted to her. Ethan felt a mixture of confusion and disappointment. It was as if her last attempt to belittle him only highlighted her own insecurities. Oliver's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding, and he turned back to Ethan, focusing on him rather than the chaotic energy surrounding them. That question hung in the air like a banner of hope, inviting Ethan to express his truth with no filters, no pretense. "I want to create change," he said, his voice steady. In that instant, Ethan understood the stark contrast between Tara's superficial judgment and his own authentic vision. He was proud of who he was becoming, and he wouldn't let anyone dim that light. The silence continued to stretch, and he felt the weight of expectations settle around him. Tara's eyes darted around the room, unsure of how to regain control over this spiraling situation, but it was clear the tide had turned. Ethan suddenly felt exhilarated, ready to embrace the journey ahead. He didn't just want to be seen, he wanted to be heard, and more importantly, he wanted to inspire others to do the same. But just as he opened his mouth to respond to Oliver with enthusiasm, a loud crash reverberated through the cafe. A figure stumbled through the door, an elderly woman, the cafe's beloved barista knocking over a tray filled with drinks. Moments shifted instantly and the room erupted into chaos. People rushed to help, pans clattered, and conversation morphed into raised voices of concern. Within seconds, the picturesque moment Ethan had been dwelling in shattered into fragments. With an uneasy feeling creeping back into his gut, Ethan followed the commotion, his own thoughts swirling in a whirlwind of uncertainty. Was this the universe's way of reminding him that dreams didn't come without chaos? As he looked around, his heart raced. No one seemed to care about Tara's judgments anymore. They were focused on helping. And yet he felt the slight unease creeping back in, the fear that he was being swept away from the path he had just begun to carve. But in the chaos, Oliver turned to Ethan, eyes gleaming with a promise. "Stay with me." Ethan nodded, holding on to that thread of connection. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, he prepared to take a deep breath, knowing that beyond the chaos lay a world waiting to be discovered. As he stepped forward, he felt the weight of anticipation and the promise of his own journey ahead. But in that moment of upheaval, he realized that sometimes even the most beautiful moments are nestled within the chaos. In that realization, he stood firm, ready to embrace both the dream and the storm. The question was, would he emerge unscathed? And more importantly, would he find his voice echoing in the midst of it all?